So just get started a little early.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's start a little early.
And if people filter back in from their 7-minute break or whatever,
exactly.
that's great. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thanks, Will.
absolutely. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Will Madden. Background is in financial services. I worked at Western Union for a little over 15 years. Learned about Bitcoin in late 2010, which is pretty early. Tried to get them to do something with it in a lot of different projects. It wasn't happening. And then finally in 2014, I decided, you know what, off of this, I'm going to go do it myself. So started Bridge 21. I'll talk to you a little bit more about what that is in more detail in a few slides. But the bottom line is we help individuals and businesses move money from the United States to Mexico and soon to other countries. So, but just to start off with a question, what do financial markets and nuclear power plants have in common, right? And the answer is, when they melt down, it's a freaking catastrophe. But the thing I think people don't think about is the scale, right? So if you put together the two biggest nuclear disasters in the history of the world, it's less than a tenth of the middle-of-the-road estimate of GDP damage from just the 2008 financial crisis, right? Which, some might argue was the catalyst for creating cryptocurrency in the first place. So the point there is money is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly dangerous, right? And I think about other things too. This lady, right? She's talking to somebody on the other side of the planet instantly for free. Doesn't give it a second thought, right? Communication information is free. And think about this though. What happens when this same person needs to pay somebody on the other side of the planet, right? She'll very quickly realize it's probably faster and cheaper to put money in an envelope and mail it there than it is to try to send it through, banks online. So money is really stuck somewhere in the 1970s and just has not kept up with the speed of information. And I don't think we think enough about the impact that that has on billions of people, right? So it's really kind of disgusting if you think about it. So just some stats. Since the 70s, cross-border payments have increased 50 times over. International wires have not changed really much since 1974 when the whole idea between SWIFT was conceived. There's a huge market. We've got, hundreds of millions of migrant workers in different countries sending money around. They're sending tens of billions, and if you look at small and medium enterprises, 10 trillion a year is conservative, and that's not even looking at governments, NGOs, or really large enterprises. The number is much larger. So why is there this huge market that's being served with, 8-track technology, right? Kind of mind-boggling. And basically the question is, why can't we email money? Why can't I send you money directly? Why can't you send money to whoever you need to send to directly? And the reason is friction. It's friction because money is very closely tied to power, usually sovereign power. It's written into regulation that in some cases is hundreds of years old, and if you know anything about the law, it typically doesn't expire, right? So if you have a regulation that's been written, it doesn't go away and get updated 10 years later. You're still dealing with the rules that were created in the 70s. So it becomes almost becoming more of a historian to try to move money around the world than you are a technologist, and I think that that's a lot of the challenge. And the stakes of screwing it up, of course, it's generally very bad. So it's friction, and there's other reasons for it too, where the banking systems of the world just are not compatible, and there aren't the right incentives for banks to really do anything about it, it seems. So what Bridge does, we look and feel really just like any other online money transfer service, like TransferWise or Zoom. Individuals and businesses can use us. You type in dollars, we tell you what peso rate you get. But what's different about us is we're the world's first company that has both quoting and settlement based entirely on buying and selling cryptocurrencies in the sending and receiving markets at the same time, right? So when you send money with us on this slide and you get a quote, we're not giving you some exchange rate from a currency market that everyone else in the world is using. We're actually finding the best prices in different currencies, taking out costs, and deriving this, this rate in this example of 1932 for your specific transaction. And it'll change. If you want to send $1 million, that rate will get slightly lower because of slippage in markets. So that's what we've really executed on in the last year, right? And it's starting to really take off, which is exciting. So, if you don't believe it, every quote we've ever given a customer is live on our site. And this chart is really hard to understand if you're not really kind of into FX trading or crypto remittance, but that gray line is the average money transfer rate, taking into account a slight markup for their FX and their fees. That green line is our rate. So we have periods of 6 to 8 months, where our exchange rate can be 10, 15% better than the wholesale rates that banks get before they mark that up to pass on to you. So, we're kicking their butts. It's basically what this means. And it's also surprisingly persistent. I think a lot of people had this sort of theory that this is arbitrage, it's going to go away, markets will become efficient, this thing will eventually become like a commodity. And I think that's also wrong. And the reason is there isn't going to be a single exchange in New York or London or Chicago where everybody goes to trade every cryptocurrency. That's never, ever going to happen because it's money. And every country is going to want to have their own rules, their own exchange, and their own control over cryptocurrency. So I think you're going to see a really fragmented world, patchwork quilt, different rules, different places. Not everybody can have an exchange account in every country. And hopefully that goes away, but I think that for all the wrong reasons, Bridge 21 has a bright future. I almost wish we didn't, and it was efficient, but it is what it is. So, but it's fantastic. Occasionally it does go the other direction. Somebody in Mexico might decide to just sell a whole lot of Bitcoin, and that there's an inversion in our rates. What happens then is it now becomes a great deal to send money from Mexico to the US, so it works both ways. Yeah. So that's Bridge. A couple of things about crypto remittance if you're interested in getting into this space. There's a lot of companies that are talking about it. It's really, really hard to execute on and do well and safely. What really matters are two things at sort of a global level. You want crypto that has a lot of market cap, right? And this is, I think, a week old, so it's probably wrong. It would probably be wrong if I hadn't updated it 5 seconds ago. But what also really matters is the trading volume. So you've got to have market depth. You can't move $10 million if you have a tiny exchange that trades a few $1,000s a day, right? So you need deep markets. It's super important. And it's not global. You have to have deep markets in the sending and receiving country, both, so that you can complete both ends of the transaction. In general, crypto risk for dummies, if you're doing remittance, you want to minimize exposure to risk through both technology and through partnerships. So if you can speed up moving crypto from exchange A to exchange B through direct relationships and contracts, you want to do that. You want to bring down costs with volume, but you also want to have technology and people on your team who really know what they're doing. Because it can be risky, if you're not careful about how much exposure you have on exchanges. Second, if you have aspects of your tech stack that you can use in an open source way, you can't always because we interact with fiat and some things you have to, security through obscurity. But if you do use open source software as for components of your stack, you want open source, peer-reviewed, really well battle-hardened tested stuff. You don't want some fork on GitHub that 3 people use. You want to go with the big industrial one. And don't do things like try to invent your own cryptographic primitives, right? Bad idea. And then finally, independently audit your InfoSec. Get third parties to look at what's going on. We have to do that once a year because we're based in the US and in the banking relationships, but even if you're not in the US, it's generally a good idea to get somebody who specializes in this type of thing to make sure that what you're doing is relatively safe. So, see. Again, crypto's dangerous, right? And I think these numbers are probably out of date now. It's probably even worse. But yeah, I mean, 1 in 3 major exchanges has had some kind of a hack. Some of them were catastrophic. Some were able to recover, like Bitfinex, right? But some have not. So you don't want to leave any cryptocurrency on an exchange if you can help it, ever. And that should go for you as an investor, by the way, too. Yeah, don't leave money on exchanges unless you have, a strategy where you have to have it there. 10% of Bitcoin that's out there has been stolen. It could actually be more than that now. And also, just hundreds of millions of dollars have been lost to coding mistakes, right? Like parity with Ethereum, or down the line, a simple coding mistake. Enough people using, again, open source software that wasn't peer reviewed sufficiently, you can blow a lot of money. So you've got to really be careful about that too. So a big thing in crypto remittance, you have to know your partners, and your partners are going to be exchanges. You need lots of them, and you need to be able to arbitrage very quickly and find the best price. Almost no exchange out there offers users custody, right? The technologies like Lightning aren't really fully out there. So you're pretty much going to have to trust the exchange with your private keys. So you're going to have to deal with that no matter what. But if they're closed source about everything, there's no audits of IT or accounting. And I know it's hard to audit an exchange, right? But even an unqualified opinion of, yes, there's X money in a bank account, if you can't get that from the exchange, you want to factor that into your decision-making process about if you really want to use that exchange, right? It might make sense if the arbitrage is big enough, but it could also mean that you lose your shirt. And then finally, the big thing is if you haven't been around for a while, if you start to hear complaints from customers about slower frozen withdrawals, or things aren't working quite well, or gee, they haven't gotten back to me in 6 weeks, where's my money? Get the heck off that exchange fast, right? You might have 2 days before the executives decide to shut the thing down. So that last part keeps repeating itself. If you see that happening, you want to be the first person up the fire exit. So let's see. So yeah, I mean, what blockchain feels like, I think especially if you're sort of into the ICO thing, there's a lot of fear and greed, right? It was Bitcoin, and Krugman back in 2011 saying it's Ponzi, then it's multi-sig, everyone's excited, Mt. Gox collapses, right? The whole Wall Street blockchain powers Bitcoin phenomenon that happened. Then it's too volatile. Then there's distributed ledger technologies. Then the DAO is hacked, and there's ICOs, and now there's this market crash, and everyone's panicking. So it's this almost news cycle that really kind of throws you off. But I think what you've got to think about is the long-term trend, right? So if you just look at this thing since, and this only goes back to 2013, it could go back a little bit further, we still have a combined market cap for crypto that's over $400 billion. And the trend, you can barely see it, but this type of thing has happened 7 or 8 times before, the whole way back to when this thing was 25 cents, up to $30, back to $2.50, right? So, I mean, it's incredibly volatile because nobody knows what this really will be or what technologies it will disrupt. But overall, if you just draw a line through this thing, crypto is definitely here to stay. I think just a couple of final thoughts. Change does take time, and I think a lot of people think that 2 guys in a garage, we're going to come out in a few weeks and disrupt the entire banking system with this awesome new technology. It's not going to happen, right? There's too much law, regulation, and complication tied up in it. I think it's going to be more like the telephone, which took 75 years to get its first 50 million users. But when the telephone finally got here, it completely transformed a lot of things about the world. So I guess the goal is, hopefully someday soon, this lady who's texting her friend in the other side of the world can also send money to anybody on the other side of the world too. So, and hopefully we live long enough to see that without it being a single PayPal or one company. So, yeah, that's it. So that's Bridge 21 contact information if you want to learn more, and I'll just open it up to Q&A if you have questions. Ripple, interesting. I mean, they have a whole lot of XRP in reserve that's coming out, so they've got a huge bankroll. And I'm not an expert in Ripple, but I have met with them several times. Their main product today really isn't using XRP, the cryptocurrency. It's more of an improvement for Swift, so banks can communicate. But there is news now. I think it was with MoneyGram that they are going to be using the crypto XRP to try to facilitate or work on a project that will actually create a real crypto remittance. They also have the XRapid project that they're working on, which is, based on XRP, but may fold in other currencies too. What I would say there is there's a great book called The Mythical Man Month, and it's really, really hard to execute this well. It took us well over 2 years to get it right. So, they have the talent and definitely the funds to do it, and I'm curious to see how that goes. Yeah, best of luck to them. We may actually, be using them as well. We could be partners. Who knows? Yeah. Any other questions?
Why Mexico? Why did you start there?
U.S. to Mexico. First of all, it's really close, and it's based in the U.S. It's the largest remittance corridor for individuals. And when we started off, we were really aiming to help migrant workers and people who were sending smaller amounts of money. The margins there were already pretty thin. People weren't getting too raw of a deal, but there was still a really big opportunity to bring down kind of the cost. And we also really liked our technology partner in Mexico, and we had, I think, good relationships with regulatory authorities and the banks, and just had a good feeling about it. So it made sense as a first move. But we are looking at setting up corridors to India. We actually already were in China and backed out just in time. So we have other things in the work, but I think we're kind of taking our time and trying to do it the right way and focus on the technology as opposed to going to the entire world at once with something half-baked. Yeah. A gentleman there. Sorry, my hearing sometimes. Could you speak up a little?
What about Africa and in particular Kenya?
Africa and Kenya. So BitPesa is doing a lot of work there. We've talked to partners in Kenya and other countries in Africa, and we're excited about it. I think that there's a little bit of a last mile issue, but I think there's an opportunity to do a lot of good there. We really probably just need to focus on that more on the biz dev side to make the right relationships. I think we've actually got that pretty close to set up. So it's something we could potentially facilitate. Yeah. We are excited about it. Yeah. Sure. But I'll get with you guys.
How are you addressing the money laundering issue here?
Great question. So that's probably the slightly less difficult than the technology was the regulation. So in the U.S., we work with FinCEN. We have to report, suspicious activity reports, currency transaction reports to FinCEN because there's just no doubt about it. We are a virtual currency exchanger. And then state by state, it varies, but we are working on different strategies to achieve licensing directly. Or we have several opportunities to work with much larger established money transmitters that already have global licensing. But that's really just a matter of kind of the deal we can negotiate with them. It would be nice to not have to do 50 states or 48 states, or I don't remember how many there are that require it now, but so we're working on it. But to answer your question about KYC and money laundering, we're really, really, really exceeding the bar. Like, we're requiring a picture of a government-issued photo ID in the U.S. to even open an account, right? Our competitors don't have to do that, right? We're date of birth, social security number, down the line. To link your bank account, you can only do it by logging directly into your account online and answering security questions. We don't really allow trial deposits, so we're very conservative about that. And then on the Mexico side, another reason we like Mexico is the SPAY payment network there is fantastic. It's fast, it works in 10 seconds. If you send money using the Mexican banking system, you get back the account holder's information, and you can compare that to the information that was provided, and you can make sure that the person isn't on a terrorist watch list or a sanctions list. So it's a really great partnership in a way to turn this into a fast electronic product. Some other countries like India, we're trying to figure out how we could possibly do that. We're not quite there yet. It can be done. I think it's probably going to maybe involve fax machines possibly, but if that's what it takes, right? So yeah. Great. Any other? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you got a question.
Does the country that you're transferring to, the one that you live in, does it have to embrace the cryptocurrency concept for you to operate there, or does the crypto transaction occur outside the country?
Great question. So if cryptocurrency is illegal, like in a place, I think it's still Ecuador is illegal. There's some other examples where you just can't trade or own or buy it, and it's completely off limits. That's going to preclude us from offering service there using our core technology.
How are you then seeing any progress with the big Tesla situation that you just talked about?
It's complicated. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I'm months behind on that, so I may not be current, but I know that there was some complexity sort of with Safaricom at one point, and I don't know where things were going, and yeah, so I don't have a great answer on that that's current, so I'm a little remiss to give a detailed answer, but that matters. And the big thing is there has to be an exchange in the country trading in the local currency that has a deep, deep order book, or else it just doesn't work, right? You have to have an exchange that you can partner with, or you can't move the money. Yeah. Gentleman there with the. Yeah.
Are you using a single exchange in Mexico, or in the US are using multiple exchanges?
We're using multiple exchanges for the US. We're using a single exchange for Mexico right now, Bitso, who we're big fans. So there are other exchanges popping up in Mexico, and of course, we'll explore those as they move from being PowerPoint presentations to actual exchanges.
Are you thinking about trying to set up exchanges yourself for places that are underserved, like African countries or other places like that?
The Philippines? Yeah, I mean, we're talking actually to Luis from Bloom Solutions a lot in the Philippines. I mean, we've got, I think, pretty good connections there. I think for us to set up exchanges in different countries might be a little bit too much of a pivot or a little off of our core competency. We are more a network that connects different exchanges in order to facilitate kind of a global payment network. But, I mean, I think there are companies out there like Alpha Point or other groups that specialize in setting up exchanges. So I think if there are the right people in a country that are interested in doing this, there are pretty easy ways to contact groups that can help set up an exchange in a country that might not have one today. So I'd love to see more of that happening. I don't think that's going to be something we'll focus on. It sounds like a really fun project, though. Yeah. Oh, 5 minutes? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, 4 minutes. So we have 4 minutes if there's any other questions. People filtering in. If not, I guess we could just end there.
It's up to you. You have 4 minutes. It's your time.
Okay, so 4 minutes. If you're interested in getting involved in our product or our project, there's our information. We're not actively raising money, but we are a startup, so we're always talking about our next fundraising round. It'll probably be closer to Series A, I think, the next time we go out and sort of pass the hat. We're not sure if we're going to do an ICO for that or not, and we're kind of seeing how things unfold with the SEC. If you need to move money to Mexico, though, for you or your business, or if you know somebody that does, please use our service. We can save you a whole lot of money. We really can. So We're working with everybody from normal people sending money to their family to affluent individuals who want to buy houses or are just trying to sort of make their own payroll, to accounting firms that are working with VCs in Mexico that are making mass payments. So we can do a lot between the U.S. and Mexico today, right now. We've been doing it for over a year. It's a pretty well-refined product, and it works really well. So yeah, mainly looking for deal flow. So you guys need to send money to Mexico from the U.S., call us. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Great. Thank you.